Strange tales, yet mirrors of human life. Hey everyone! Welcome to Encountering Chinese, Strange Tales from Zhai. Today, I'm going to bring you a story called The Deception. Scheme 1. One day, a servant of a censor was strolling through the marketplace when he happened to run into a well-dressed man with an air of importance. The man approached and struck up a conversation. After exchanging a few pleasantries, the man inquired about the servant's master, his name and official position. The servant, suspecting nothing, readily provided the details. The man smiled and introduced himself. My surname is Wang. I serve as a chief eunuch in the princess's residence. As they chatted, the conversation grew more intimate. Wang said, "The political scene these days is full of hidden dangers. High-ranking officials all need the protection of royal relatives. Tell me, which noble family does your master rely on for support?" The servant replied, "My master has never aligned himself with any noble family." Wang sighed and shook his head. "Your master is only focused on short-term gains and isn't considering the great disaster that could befall him in the future. Without the protection of the imperial family, it's only a matter of time before he suffers serious consequences." The servant looked puzzled. "Then who should my master turn to for support?" Lowering his voice, Wang said, "The princess I serve is kind and willing to shelter others. In fact, there was once a vice minister who got promoted through me by gaining favor with the princess. If your master is willing to part with some silver, say 1,000 taels, arranging a meeting with the princess wouldn't be difficult at all." The servant's eyes lit up with excitement, and he eagerly asked, "Where do you live?" Wang gestured toward a grand residence not far away. "I live right there. Everyone in the alley knows me. I come and go every day." Believing he had encountered a great benefactor, the servant hurried home and relayed everything to his master. The censor was overjoyed at the news and immediately prepared a lavish banquet, instructing his servant to invite Wang. Wang gladly accepted the invitation and dined with the censor. Throughout the feast, he spoke at great length about the princess, her temperament, her daily routines, and even minor details of her household. His words were so vivid and detailed that they left no room for doubt. Finally, Wang said, "If it weren't for the fact that we live so close to each other, I wouldn't introduce you to the princess even for 100 taels of silver." Hearing this, the censor was even more grateful and regarded Wang with deep admiration. As they parted, Wang instructed, "Just prepare the gifts. I'll find the right opportunity to speak well of you in front of the princess. Once everything is arranged, I will notify you." A few days later, Wang finally returned to the censor's residence, riding a tall, majestic horse, looking every bit the part of an important figure. As soon as he saw the censor, he urged, "Hurry up and get everything ready. Bring your gifts and come with me. The princess is extremely busy. Petitioners line up one after another, hoping for an audience. Today, her schedule is packed from morning till night, but right now, there's a brief window of free time. If you miss this chance, who knows when you'll get another opportunity." Overcome with anticipation, the censor gathered a chest full of gold and silver and followed Wang out of his residence. After traveling over 10 miles through winding roads, they finally arrived at the princess's estate. The censor dismounted and waited outside while Wang carried the gifts inside first. He disappeared into the grand residence, leaving the censor to anxiously await his return. A long while later, Wang emerged from the estate and loudly announced, "The princess summons the honorable censor." His words echoed through the courtyard as several attendants began repeating the announcement in succession, their voices resounding throughout the mansion. Upon receiving the call, the censor hurriedly bowed and respectfully entered the grand hall. Inside, he saw a stunningly beautiful woman seated on an ornate throne. She was as radiant as a celestial being. Her garments shimmered with splendor, and around her stood rows of elegantly dressed maids, all clad in luxurious silk. The scene was dazzling. The censor immediately knelt and paid his respects, not daring to show the slightest sign of disrespect. The princess, maintaining an air of regal grace, had him seated under the eaves and ordered that he be served fragrant tea in a golden bowl. After a brief conversation, where she offered him a few words of encouragement, she signaled that the meeting was over. The censor bowed deeply once again and respectfully withdrew. As he stepped outside, another attendant relayed a message from within the hall. The princess had decided to bestow upon him a pair of silk boots and a rare sable hat as gifts. Filled with gratitude, the censor returned home, his heart brimming with admiration for Wang. To express his appreciation, he decided to pay Wang another visit in person. He prepared a formal calling card and went to Wang's residence, only to find the doors tightly shut. At first, he assumed that Wang was still occupied with duties at the princess's estate, but over the next 3 days, he visited again and again, only to be met with the same locked doors. Puzzled and growing uneasy, he finally sent his servant to the princess's mansion to inquire further. To his utter shock, the estate's grand gates were also tightly closed. When the servant asked around, the neighbors told him, "There was never a princess here. A group of people rented this mansion a few days ago, but they packed up and left soon after. If you count the days, they've been gone for 3 days now." Hearing this, the servant rushed back to report everything to his master. Only then did the censor and his servant realize the truth. It had all been a grand deception. But by now, there was nothing they could do. They could only exchange bitter smiles, powerless to undo what had been done. Scheme 2. A deputy general arrived in the capital, bringing with him a large sum of money, hoping to find an opportunity to be promoted to a full general. However, he struggled to find the right connections. One day, as he wandered the city, he encountered a stranger clad in a fur-lined robe, riding a fine horse. The man approached him and introduced himself, saying, "My cousin is the emperor's personal bodyguard." After chatting over tea, the man motioned for the deputy general's attendants to step outside. Then, lowering his voice, he said, "There is currently a vacant general's position in a certain department. If you're willing to spend generously to grease the wheels, I can ask my cousin to put in a good word for you before the emperor. If that happens, the position will be yours for the taking. No matter how powerful your competitors are, they won't be able to snatch it from you." At first, the deputy general felt suspicious. The whole thing sounded too good to be true. Sensing his hesitation, the man chuckled and said, "You don't have to worry about a thing. I'm not asking for a single coin from you. My cousin will only be taking a small share for his troubles. In fact, we can set an exact amount, put it in writing, and use it as proof. You won't have to pay a penny until the emperor summons you. And if the plan doesn't work out, you won't lose a single tael of silver. No one will be able to take your money by force. Hearing this, the deputy general's doubts disappeared. His face lit up with excitement, and he immediately agreed to the deal. The next day, the man returned and took the deputy general to meet his cousin. They arrived at a lavish estate, its grandeur befitting that of a noble household. Inside, the halls were richly decorated, exuding an air of luxury. The man's cousin, Tian, carried himself with an air of arrogance. When the deputy general greeted him with a respectful bow, Tian barely acknowledged him. The two cousins whispered in private for a while before returning with an official-looking document. Handing it over, the man said to the deputy general, "My cousin and I have discussed the matter. After careful consideration, we've concluded that this appointment won't be possible without at least 10,000 taels of silver. Here's the agreement, sign and stamp it." The deputy general, without hesitation, signed his name and pressed his seal onto the document. Tian glanced at the paper, then turned to his cousin and said coldly, "People are unpredictable. What if he goes back on his word after getting what he wants? We need to be prepared for that." But the man only laughed and reassured him. "Cousin, you're overthinking it. If you have the power to give him the position, surely you also have the power to take it away. Besides, many people at court are eyeing this role, willing to pay a fortune, yet they lack the right connections. That alone proves how rare this opportunity is. The deputy general is an ambitious man. Why would he risk breaking his word over a mere sum of money?" Hearing this, the deputy general quickly swore an oath, promising to honor the deal. The three continued chatting for a while longer before the deputy general finally took his leave. The man escorted him to the gate and said, "Go home and wait patiently. In 3 days, you'll have your answer." 2 days later, at dusk, just as the sun had set, a group of men suddenly barged into the deputy general's residence, shouting, "The emperor is waiting to see you." The deputy general was overjoyed. Without hesitation, he hurried toward the palace. Upon arrival, he saw the emperor seated in the grand hall, surrounded by palace guards. Overcome with excitement, the deputy general immediately dropped to his knees and performed a deep bow. The emperor granted him a seat and exchanged a few pleasantries. Then, turning to the officials present, the emperor said, "I have heard of your extraordinary bravery, and now that I see you in person, I can confirm that the rumors are true." He continued, "There is a strategically important location that requires a capable general for defense. If you can prove yourself worthy, the day you are granted a noble title will not be far off." Hearing this, the deputy general once again knelt and expressed his deep gratitude. With that, he was dismissed from the hall. As soon as he stepped out of the palace, the man in the fur robe, riding his fine horse, appeared at his side and escorted him back to the inn. Remembering their agreement, the deputy general happily handed over 10,000 taels of silver. The man took the money and left without hesitation. Feeling ecstatic, the deputy general confidently awaited his official appointment. Each day, he boasted about his impending promotion to friends and relatives, eagerly anticipating the imperial decree. But a few days later, he received shocking news. The general's position he had been promised had already been given to someone else. Furious, he stormed into the Ministry of War and demanded an explanation. "I have already received the emperor's appointment. How could this position be given to someone else?" The Minister of War was baffled. To him, the Deputy General's words sounded like pure nonsense. Enraged, he immediately ordered the Deputy General's arrest and handed him over to the Imperial Court for investigation. Under interrogation, the Deputy General had no choice but to reveal the name of the man who had orchestrated the scheme. However, to everyone's astonishment, no such person existed within the imperial records. In the end, the Deputy General not only lost 10,000 taels of silver but was also stripped of his position. The entire affair was truly beyond belief. Even if a military officer were foolish, could an entire imperial palace be faked? Perhaps the whole thing had been nothing more than an elaborate illusion. This incident perfectly proved an old saying. The greatest thieves do not need swords or spears to carry out their crimes. Scheme 3. Li Sheng of Jiaxiang County was a master of the guqin. One day, while wandering in the eastern suburbs of the county, he saw a laborer digging up an ancient guqin from the soil. Li Sheng, sensing its value, purchased it for an incredibly low price. Gently wiping away the dust, he was amazed to see the instrument emit a strange, radiant glow. After adjusting the strings, he plucked a note. The sound was crisp, melodious, and exceptionally beautiful. Overjoyed, Li Sheng knew he had found a true treasure. Carefully wrapping the guqin in a brocade pouch, he hid it in his cabinet and kept it a secret, even from his closest friends. Not long after, a man named Qing Shi was appointed as the county assistant magistrate. Upon assuming his new post, he sent his visiting card to Li Sheng, seeking a meeting. Li Sheng was not one to socialize much, but out of courtesy, he returned the visit. A few days later, Qing Shi invited Li Sheng to his home for a drink. Li Sheng repeatedly declined but eventually agreed. To his surprise, Qing Shi was a refined and eloquent man, with an engaging personality. Li Sheng found himself enjoying his company. The following day, Li Sheng reciprocated the hospitality by inviting Qing Shi over for drinks. As they talked and toasted, the atmosphere was relaxed and pleasant, and their bond grew stronger. From then on, the two often spent time together, drinking and chatting under the moonlight, deepening their friendship. 1 year later, while visiting Qing Shi's residence, Li Sheng noticed a beautifully embroidered pouch resting on a table. Curious, he opened it and found a guqin inside. Seeing Li Sheng's fascination, Qing Shi asked, "Do you play the guqin as well?" With a smile, Li Sheng replied, "It is my greatest passion." Qing Shi was surprised. "We've known each other for quite some time now, but I've never heard you play. Why is that?" Without waiting for an answer, Qing Shi lit an incense burner, filling the room with the rich fragrance of sandalwood. Then, he turned to Li Sheng with a warm smile. "Please, play a song for me." Li Sheng obliged. He began to play, his fingers gliding over the strings, producing a sound as pure and flowing as a mountain stream. The melody was ethereal, almost otherworldly. Qing Shi was captivated. You truly are a master. But let me play something for you as well. Don't laugh if my skills aren't up to your level. With that, he played the wind-riding melody. His music was light and soaring, like birds dancing in the wind, graceful and full of life. Li Sheng was deeply impressed. Filled with admiration, he humbly asked to become Qing Shi's student, hoping to further refine his skills. From that moment on, their friendship became one of both companionship and musical mentorship. For over a year, Qing Shi imparted all his knowledge of the Guqin to Li Sheng, holding nothing back. However, every time Qing Shi visited Li Sheng's home, Li Sheng would always bring out an ordinary Guqin for him to play. He never once revealed that he possessed the ancient Guqin he had secretly acquired. One night, after drinking a bit too much, Qing Shi said, "I've recently learned a new piece. Would you like to hear it?" Without waiting for a reply, he began playing the Lament of Xiang Concubines. The melody was sorrowful and deep, as if weeping through the strings. Li Sheng was profoundly moved and praised it repeatedly. Qing Shi sighed. "It's a pity this Guqin isn't of the finest quality. If I had a superior instrument, the music would sound even more hauntingly beautiful." Hearing this, Li Sheng's heart stirred. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "I actually own a remarkable Guqin, unlike any ordinary one. Since we are kindred spirits in music, how could I selfishly keep it hidden?" With that, he stood up, opened his cabinet, and carefully retrieved the treasured Guqin. Qing Shi took the instrument, gently brushed off a thin layer of dust, and placed it on the table. Then, he played the Lament of Xiang Concubines once more. This time, the melody flowed like a murmuring stream, blending seamlessly with the wind. The sound was mesmerizing. Li Sheng was so enchanted that he unconsciously tapped along to the rhythm. When the piece ended, Qing Shi sighed. "My skills are unworthy of such a fine instrument. If my wife were to play it, the effect would be even more exquisite." Li Sheng was surprised. "Your wife plays the Guqin as well?" Qing Shi nodded with a smile. "The piece I just played was actually taught to me by her." Li Sheng marveled, "What a shame that she is bound by the conventions of the inner chambers, and I have never had the chance to hear her play." Qing Shi chuckled. "We are close friends. Why should we be bound by such formalities? Tomorrow, bring your Guqin to my house, and my wife will play for you." Li Sheng readily agreed. The next day, Li Sheng arrived at Qing Shi's residence with the ancient Guqin. Qing Shi had already prepared a lavish feast, and the two drank together. After a while, Qing Shi took the Guqin into the inner chamber. Moments later, he returned and sat down. Through the sheer curtain, Li Sheng could faintly see a woman dressed in elegant, brightly colored robes. A delicate fragrance drifted out from behind the veil. Then, soft and graceful notes filled the air. Li Sheng didn't recognize the piece, but the music was as light as mist, as fine as silk, gently weaving its way into his soul. He was utterly spellbound. When the song ended, he couldn't resist sneaking a glance beyond the curtain. Inside, he caught sight of a breathtakingly beautiful woman in her early 20s, seated gracefully before the Guqin. Qing Shi raised his cup and urged Li Sheng to drink more. As they continued to toast, the woman behind the curtain plucked the strings again, this time playing the Rhapsody on Idle Feelings. The melody was as clear and refreshing as a mountain spring, immersing Li Sheng further in its enchantment. As the wine flowed, Li Sheng became completely intoxicated. Realizing he was too drunk to stay any longer, he rose to leave and asked Qing Shi to return his guqin. Qing Shi smiled. "You've had too much to drink. If you stumble on the way home, you might damage the guqin. Why not leave it here for tonight? Come back tomorrow, and my wife will teach you a few techniques." Li Sheng saw no reason to doubt him, so he left the guqin behind and departed. The next day, Li Sheng went to Qing Shi's residence again, only to find the place eerily silent. The grand house was empty, with only an elderly servant watching the gate. Li Sheng asked, "Where is Qing Shi?" The old servant replied, "He left early this morning, sometime between 3 and 5 a.m., taking his entire family with him. I don't know where they went, only that he said he'd be back in 3 days." But when Li Sheng returned 3 days later at dusk, there was still no sign of Qing Shi. He inquired again, but no one had any information. Since Qing Shi did not assume his post at the county office, the clerks and officers began to suspect something and reported the matter to the county magistrate. The magistrate immediately ordered men to open Qing Shi's residence, only to find it completely empty. Aside from a few tables, chairs, and beds, everything was gone. With no other options, the magistrate escalated the case to his superiors. However, even they could find no trace of Qing Shi. Li Sheng was devastated by the loss of his treasured guqin. He couldn't eat or sleep, and his mind was consumed with thoughts of the missing instrument. Determined to uncover the truth, he set out on a long journey to Qing Shi's supposed hometown. Qing Shi was said to be from Hubei. 3 years ago, he had purchased an official position, securing a post as the assistant magistrate of Jiaxiang County. When Li Sheng arrived in Qing Shi's hometown, he began asking around. But to his shock, the locals all said they had never heard of such a person. Someone finally told him. There was a Taoist named Cheng who was a skilled guqin player. People even said he had the power to turn stone into gold. But 3 years ago, Taoist Cheng suddenly disappeared. No one has seen him since. Li Sheng's heart sank. Could this Taoist Cheng be the very same Qing Shi? He continued to ask about the Taoist's age and appearance, and the descriptions he received matched Qing Shi perfectly. It all became clear. Qing Shi, or rather Taoist Cheng, had spent money to buy an official title for a single purpose: to steal Li Sheng's guqin. For over a year, he had never once mentioned the guqin himself. Instead, he gradually revealed his own musical talents, luring Li Sheng into admiration. Then, with the help of a beautiful woman, he set the final trap. This was a scheme that had been in the making for 3 years. And in the end, Taoist Cheng had succeeded. He had taken the guqin and vanished without a trace. His obsession with the instrument far surpassed even Li Sheng's. Frauds and tricksters come in many forms, with endless methods of deception. But among them all, Taoist Cheng had to be the most refined and elegant of swindlers. The story mentions 2 well-known melodies. The first is Lament of the Xiang Concubines. This piece was first discovered in a 1590 collection titled The Complete Book of the Qin and later reintroduced to the public by Wu Zonghan, who transcribed it. The melody is based on the ancient tale of two sisters, a Huang and Nuying. According to legend, Emperor Yao had two daughters, a Huang and Nuying. Both were married to Emperor Shun. Whenever Shun's parents and younger brother plotted against him, the two sisters used their wisdom to help him escape danger. Shun ruled for 39 years. During a southern tour, he passed away unexpectedly. The records of the Grand Historian by Sima Qian of the Han Dynasty records. He died in the wilderness of Kanggu and was buried in Jiui, south of the Yangtze. Upon hearing of their husband's death, the two sisters journeyed thousands of miles in search of him. When they finally arrived, they wept bitterly, embracing the bamboo groves in their grief. They cried until their tears ran dry and eventually died of sorrow. Because they perished by the Xiang River, they were later revered as the Xiang Ladies. This melody was composed in their memory, capturing their undying love and sorrow. The second famous piece, Rhapsody on Idle Feelings, was composed based on the poem of the same name by Tao Yuanming, a literary figure of the Eastern Jin dynasty. As a result, the melody aligns with the poem's emotions. This poem depicts the author's deep longing for a peerless beauty, fantasizing about being with her day and night, never parting from her. He even imagines transforming into various objects to remain close to her. The poem employs the Bai Xing technique, with emotions weaving and unfolding layer by layer. Its language is exquisite, its transitions natural, capturing not only the beauty's stunning appearance but also her noble character and lofty aspirations. Because of this, later generations praised it highly, describing it as soaring like a magnificent peak beyond the clouds, with splendid diction that surpasses the works of the ancients. As for the wind-riding melody, it was purely a fictional creation by the storyteller and has no historical origin. Alright. That's all for today's strange tale. The Deception. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Feel free to leave your comments and share with others. See you again in the next issue.